Just looking at some of the comments here. Michael says that a lot of people are undergoing the underworld journey now, and yeah, usually between 30 and 45 people embark that underworld journey quite naturally. And when we do conscious work, especially breath work and so forth, we speed up that process of going through the underworld. Maybe we go in quicker, or earlier, or so-called prematurely, but again, that's kind of the magician's path, is to do things in an accelerated way. And I mean, this is a very important point, I think, for the breathwork process that we're doing here and in general, is that when we embark on this journey, we are rebirthing. We are consciously dying so that we can be reborn. And every time we are reborn, we kind of die to the ego. And let's go back to that model of the onion with the different layers. Every time we die symbolically, we maybe kill off a few of those layers that are keeping us so strongly in ego, that are separating us from that core. And the process of rebirth isn't one of just being dying once spiritually and then being reborn and then it's all done. It's usually quite a few deaths and rebirths that we go through, and those could be things that happen to us, like losing a relationship or having a near-death experience, or they could be things that we take on consciously, whereby we consciously put ourselves in the dying process and therefore the rebirthing process. And all deep trance is about dying consciously and being reborn with consciousness. So we accelerate our journey in that way. Whenever we die symbolically, we're accelerating the journey of being reborn. And that's very much the principle of initiation, is dying to the old, letting go, getting lighter in both senses of the word, of lighter, more light in our being, more radiance, but also less heaviness, more lightness in our being, so that we can kind of fly free. And for Kali's question, yes, I use the Rider-Waite here, but I generally use the Cosmic Tarot, which is this one. That's the back of it. The Thoth Tarot, I find it's too much based in Aleister Crowley's principles and theories. I mean, there's good stuff there, but it's very specific to Aleister Crowley's way of seeing the world, which I don't often agree with. But still beautiful artwork and some very interesting things there. So now we are going to go into the magician's journey. So the whole idea is that this is kind of the spiral of life and growth. So this is sunrise here, and this is sunset, midday, midnight. So that represents that hero's journey that we just looked at through the tarot cards. The magician uses the laws of nature in order to go beyond nature, or in order to go beyond the unconscious path. So the magician uses consciousness to kind of break the rules of the world in which we live. And science is masterful in defining and reflecting on the rules of nature. But of course, that creates limitation as well. That kind of then can box us even more into the physical world, which is only our stage. It's, when we define ourselves according to the world out there, we are like actors defining ourselves by the stage, and we're not kind of waking up within the play or within the game. And that's kind of the purpose of the magician, or the task of the magician, is to wake up and to see the game for what it is, and then to reconnect. Maybe that's using the metaphor of the actor, It's for the actor to wake up and say, well, I actually want to write this play. I don't want to be at the mercy of this play. But while we're in the play and while we're not awake, then we're going to go according to the play, to someone else's script. So with this journey here, we've got the spiral, and here we've got the magician on the inner circle of the spiral, or the inner level. And then the outer level starting here is, starting with the world, with the judgment card, and with the sun at sunrise. So normally the hero, having done the hero's journey, if he or she just kind of retires, would, continue in this direction. So now, being magicians, we're going to go in this direction. We're going to go back into the darkest night here, which is this place, so that we can go back into the day, into the sun here, and reap the benefits. So here we've got the world card, which, as you might remember, is a higher frequency of the magician. So those cards are connected directly, symbolically. They're just different levels and different frequencies of the same energy, that energy of manifestation. So here we've got the sun and judgment. So this is the sunrise. This is that glimpse of what's possible, of what we want to create for this next day. And of course, symbolically, for this journey that we're on in the 1 year process, our day is going to be a year long. And I specifically am going with the symbolism of the day as opposed to the seasons, because that might be confusing, because we've got people in the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere, and the seasons are different, and so forth. So we're just going to go with the day. But the symbolism of the day and its phases is the same as the symbolism of the year and its seasons. The midnight is midwinter, sunset is autumn, midday is summer, and sunrise is spring. And spring, that journey from spring through winter is the journey of growth. And then with winter, we go from winter, which is kind of symbolic death, into spring, we go back into rebirth. So again, it's the same thing with the dawn of the day. So here, the magician or the sage has reached the symbolic new day, the new phase of their life, the new knowing, the new understanding of their power. But now they're saying, okay, I've done this work, I've been on the hero's journey, but I'm going to go against the stream, and I'm going to go into these places where the power and the mysteries are hidden consciously, and I'm going to bring them into my toolbox now, those mysteries, so that I can create the manifestation in my life later. So that's creating a pattern for us to do some of the deeper digging work in the first 3 months of this process, so that, intentionally by the end of this process in November, December, we can manifest fully those things that we want to create. And again, that's kind of our personal journey, but that's also so that we can understand the manifestation process, to take our clients through it. And throughout this journey as well, session by session, we'll also cover some of the spiritual principles related to each one of these cards. So our cards for this month, the world card, the judgment card, and the sun card. So the sun relates directly to that dawn. The world relates to us reflecting on, where are we in the world now? What is our world showing us? What is the world out there showing us? We've been creating for the last, obviously up until this point, the last while up until this point. But more specifically, what is the world that we've created after the last year or so? So again, that's that kind of taking stock. And you may want to think about that now, jot that down, either to reflect on now or to reflect on later. But what is the world showing you now? Not necessarily the world out there as the media lies about it, but more about what is your world showing you? You know, what are your relationships showing you? What is your work world showing you? What is your abundance levels showing you? And, you know, all of those areas, what emotions do they bring up for you? So what is being reflected back as we sit on this, in this dawn, this time of a bit of light, so that we can decide how we go forward in this journey. The Sun card and the Judgment card are similar in this context of the Magician's journey, because they relate to the hope, the light of what we can create. So that relates directly to our vision. What is the vision that you hold for this coming year? And that can be very specific, or it can be more related to a state of being or a state of consciousness. And that really is up to you to determine. And my suggestion always is you have a few specifics. You know, what do you want in your relationships? What do you want in your work and abundance? What projects are important for you? You know, getting a sense of what the projects are that you want to focus on. And also then the inner states. What do you want to create in your life? Do you want to cultivate more of the happiness and the joy? Is it transformation on the whole that you want? Is it a sense of peace? Is it greater spiritual understanding? Is it a new path of spiritual practice on some level that you wish to put into place into your life? So the Judgment and the Sun hold the promise of the time ahead. Then next we're going from the dawn, sunrise, into that section of the night between midnight and sunrise. So it's midnight to sunrise. It's that darkest place. It's that quietest place. So we've got the star card and we've got the moon card there, and that'll be next week's session. And that's very much about our most intuitive place. That is where the night is the darkest and stillest. That is where we're kind of most in touch with our instincts and how those instincts inform us and what our guidance in the world is showing us. And maybe that's something that you can reflect on as well between now and next session, is just listening to what your gut feeling and intuition is saying about this time ahead. Next, we have the Tower and the Devil here in the midnight phase. And the Tower and the Devil are that darkest place. So the Tower is the guardian that guards the treasure of the mysteries. And that needn't necessarily be a demon per se, or something outside of ourselves. It's also our own, belief systems, our own resistances. It relates to our own prohibitions, socially, spiritually, about what spirituality can be. Again, in Judeo-Christian, Islamic, religion, the biggest prohibition is against making a graven image or idolatry, which is very opposite to the so-called pagan religions, like the ancient Greeks, the Hindus, and most other religions, where there was the understanding that the image holds the energy of the divinity it represents, and that image being here in this physical world kind of transmits that energy, especially when offerings are made or when it's energized in some way. But that so-called idolatry is one of our biggest taboos, within the Judeo-Christian lineage. That's one of them. Sexuality is another one. Tantra, conscious sexuality. That's also one of the big prohibitions. And again, it's not about necessarily looking at the prohibitions, but the Devil card also has a Dionysian aspect. The god Dionysius or Pan, which is the god of ecstasy, the god of sexuality, the god of intoxication. So that's also something that the more left-hand side of the brain style religions completely reject. They want you to be pure and focused and rational, whereas the Dionysian, Bacchic, Shiva based spiritualities are about expressing the ecstasy, going into that wild trance, be it through dance or through chanting or through other methods, even self-flagellation, etc., self-mutilation. Those also create ecstatic states. It might be ecstatic pain, but it could also be ecstatic pleasure. So these cards here are saying, question what you think to be spiritually right or pure or correct, because the mysteries of God are held everywhere and in all places, and each one of us might have our own way and approach to finding these spiritual mysteries. And very often the path that we've been told to follow spiritually is not our own path, and that path might be a dead end, and we might keep hitting our heads on that dead end path for our whole lives, just because of our stubbornness or because of our being so implicated in our conditioning. Then we get to this phase here, which is the Death card and Temperance. So that is the phase between sunset and midnight. So that is, when the activity of the day is still brought into night, and that is, with Death and Temperance, that is where we need to die to the world. But because we're going in the opposite direction, because we're going, from that darkest place, we're now from the beyond, from the other side, through the Death card, we are bringing information through. We're bringing new spiritual ways, new ways of manifestation through into our world. Of course, when we get to the sunset here, we're going to go back into the daylight. So here we're starting to find the ways, and this will be session 4. We're starting to find the ways to bring these other spiritual ways back into the world out there, back into the beyond. So again, this is about restructuring things. All manifestation is about getting out of the boxes that keep us stuck in a particular way, so that we can live out of the box, and that we can die to the old structures, and so that we can create new ways and new structures in our lives. And very often we can't make change because those old structures are so entrenched, or because those boxes are so filled up with stuff that there's no room for movement. So at this point here, we get to the sunset, and that is the Justice card and the Hanged Man. And as you'll remember, the Hanged Man he's looking at the world from a different angle. So this is where things start to get turned upside down into our lives, so that we can really live this next phase, which is, in my conception of this process, and I didn't mention this before, but it's very important, so that we can live heaven on earth. We're doing the purification here, we're getting through the dark stuff here, so that we can live heaven on earth, so that we can live those other principles of love, of the masculine and the feminine, etc., that we can live those from a heavenly perspective, as opposed to living them from the lower frequency perspective that we lived them at the beginning of the hero's journey, at the beginning of our conditioning process. So we're calling in a new day, we're going against the stream to create a new day, so that we shift dimensions, so that we enter heaven on earth, so that the day that we go into has got a very different quality and a very different frequency. And again, that is where we have to face the ways in which we are attached to the nightmare, the hell on earth, and all of the conditioning that goes with that, so that when the new day comes, we can live a very different quality in the world. So, here it is about putting the new structures into place. Then we go to the Hermit and the Wheel of Fortune, which is the mid-afternoon energy here. And that is where we are calling on fate, the wheel of fortune, to make the changes in our world, in our lives, where we're calling on the higher forces to make those changes possible. And then the midday section here is the Lovers, the Chariot, and the Strength card. That is where we rewire our ways in relationship, where we rewire our work, where we rewire how we work in the world, how we struggle in the world, so that we can then live ourselves, our individuality, as an emperor, as an empress, as a high priest, as a high priestess. We can live that differently, so that we can become our true selves, and that we can, give all of the expression of our true selves in the world in a different way, in a way that's different to our conditioning. And then we get to the Magician card here again, which is just, a higher, different frequency of where we started. We get back to the sun rise, which is that energy of the fresh day, of the new beginning, so that we can live that heaven on earth in the world, that we can fully embody that, so that we can make that our way of being. So the Sage's journey, therefore, is a step-by-step process that we'll put into place month by month with the work of those cards, with our breath work, with the different spiritual practices that we'll explore. I'll lay those out for you more as we go along. But this week, of course, is more about the intentions that you're setting, and about how you want to be the magician in the world, in what way you want to be the magician in the world. So the question is about the archetype of the trickster, where that comes in. I would say the trickster is kind of with the devil card, the knight card. That is where we are, first of all, I guess, tricking ourselves and tricking the world into making a different path possible. But the trickster is very much more the devil. The trickster could be the fool, as Michael says, but the trickster is kind of the devil card, because it's going beyond our preconceptions. The trickster is always about breaking our preconceptions and tricking us into seeing a different perspective. So the devil in the midnight position there is about changing our preconceptions about how we live in the world, so that we can live the world differently. I think we get so holy about certain principles and about certain belief systems and about certain ideologies or spiritual beliefs that we're not even willing to look at things in different ways. And yeah, you say there, Kay, about the shaman being the trickster. That's absolutely right. The shaman does embody that trickster energy. And the trickster can be about, on the one hand, being light and fun and finding fun and joy, but the trickster can also be about getting a completely different take on the world and on ourselves. And that, for me, comes in the nighttime, between the devil and the death, that process there, where we are kind of tricking our subconscious mind into living differently, in tricking ourselves out of our old belief systems. Because it's almost like, it's been a 30, 40, 50 year process of getting conditioned into a particular way. And, we don't want to go through another 30 or whatever years. It doesn't need to be a linear journey out of that deep place that we've gone into. We kind of want a quick way out. We want a quick solution to this, because we don't have time in a way, but we also don't need to take so much time to make those things. But we need that sharp shift and that sharp change in the way of doing things, which is very much the trickster energy, and which is why we're doing this journey in this way, an accelerated journey through trance. Because remember, when we go into trance, we go into a timeless place. We reconnect to the timeless that's beyond the time of this world of chronos, which is where we're living, the time of chronology, which is the physical world. We're kind of subverting that. We're subverting the flow of time through the magician's journey by going backwards, and therefore creating trickster energy, so that we can find a way into heaven in a different way. And of course, that principle of heaven on earth applies to both the magician and the sage. The magician wants to create heaven on this earth as it is, or transform this earth to make this experience heaven. The sage wants to transform the inner world, the spiritual world, so that that is more of a heavenly experience, so that that will then, through the inner process, affect the outer world. So this is very much, therefore, about, yes, changing those perceptions, changing those approaches, in unconventional and kind of uncanny ways, using magic, magic being the conscious use of life force energy. And of course, and just going back to Aleister Crowley, for example, ritual magic was kind of redefined in the 19th century along certain, I guess, Judeo-Christian principles, esoteric principles, which I think in some ways are misleading. So when I use the word magic, I'm certainly not talking about the ritual magic as defined by the Golden Dawn groups and by the Freemasons and those people, which I think in some ways are about manipulation. We're talking about the pure energy of magic, which is the spark of creation, the spark of consciousness, and creation following that spark of consciousness. That is fundamentally what manifestation is. But I think the difference between the word manifestation and the word magic is that manifestation implies a longer journey or process. Magic is about doing something faster. Of course, that doesn't mean that we guarantee that it's going to be a faster process. That is our hope. But of course, the places in which you get stuck are the places where you need the breath work to get the energy moving. So, the breath work is kind of, as in any breath work session, like a one-on-one session, for example, the theory, the analysis is the first bit, the second bit is through the breathe, where the energy is moved. In this process as well, we're doing the same thing. With our actual lessons, where we're looking at the theory, and in our own processing, we're trying to shift the energy through our conscious processes, through our thoughts, through the practices that we do. But it's through the actual breathe, the actual breath work, that we shift the energy, and that we get the head and the subconscious in alignment, so that they can work together, so that they can create the magic. So, are there any other questions or comments there? So Michael asks if there are any stories or myths that encapsulate the magician's or sage's journey. I actually don't think so, and there's nothing I can think of at this stage. It's almost like a lot of the myths, and I'm just thinking specifically of the myth of Orpheus now, are stories of the hero's journey almost working, so that those figures could almost become those real sages, but then it doesn't happen. It's almost like a warning about, be careful, you've got to stay sort of mortal, or you're still at the mercy of the laws of the gods. And I don't think the magician or sage's journey is about going against the gods or against the bigger order. I think it's about finding the loopholes and staying liminal. When I say liminal, I mean kind of on the edge, sort of in the places where we're not necessarily seen. The magician's path or journey isn't about going on Instagram and saying, hey everyone, I'm a magician, look at me, look how I'm flaunting the laws of the gods. The magician's journey is about exactly staying in on the edges of reality, staying on the edges of the shadows in order to do the magic. And it's not a self-aggrandizement process. I mean, you can be a magician and you can get the acknowledgement that you need or want, but it's not about getting that acknowledgement for power in its own right. It's it's to empower yourself, but it's not in order to bask in the glory of power. And maybe the hero's journey is a little bit more about that hero in the world that gets the acclaim. The magician's journey is about finding the self-satisfaction, finding the empowerment that you can live your life with joy and empowerment without necessarily having the acclaim. Again, the magician's journey is not about convincing the masses or leading the masses. The magician's journey is about conducting your life, or even holding space for shift in the lives of others without necessarily getting the acclaim and the acknowledgement for that. In a lot of stories, they kind of allude to the magicians, but they don't really talk about them very much. I mean, Merlin is kind of alluded to. He's a figure in the story of King Arthur. Arthur is the hero, and Lancelot and Guinevere, they're kind of the heroes, and they face their destiny in different ways. He kind of pops in and appears every now and then and does his thing when necessary. So I think it's an interesting question, Michael, and that's why when I started to think about this sage's journey, I looked to mythology, and even before, I've looked to what's beyond the hero. What is beyond the hero's journey, or what are the other storylines that aren't the hero's journey? And I think that's still very much a work in progress, and that is something that's still to be defined. And then Shub asks, is it a good idea to get a tarot deck for this year's work? I think it's a good idea always to get a tarot deck, to have a tarot deck, because yes, of course, the tarot is known to be something for reading cards for people, and that is definitely a function that it has, but that's not the only function. The tarot is a map of life. So the deck that I work with is the Cosmic Tarot. I don't have the box here. It's by Norbert Löscher, and that's the back of the cards, the Cosmic Tarot. I think that's a really good deck because I really love the symbolism. I love the pictures. The Rider-Waite, which is the standard one, is also great. It's the symbols that most people know. That's also got a lot of information in the pictures. It's important to get a deck that's got information in the pictures. The Marseille deck, which is the other one that's quite famous, has more simplistic pictures. So I like the Cosmic. So that might be something you want to get and work with. And the tarot is obviously also great in a session with your clients for you to do a reading, like even if it's just a one card reading to give some insight. But also in terms of the hero's journey, the tarot is great for your 10 session process. Again, the magician's journey is something a little bit more for us who are doing sort of this deeper work. Once you've been through that deeper journey, then you'll understand it better. And you can guide other people better. But the magician's journey is a little bit more subtle, maybe for some of your early clients. So regarding the Tini's question about learning about the cards, I do have a book on the tarot that I've written, and I will put my video on. I don't know if there's much other stuff that approaches the tarot in my way. Obviously there are people that do, but I've kind of developed a way that brings in a lot of the symbolism and the elements, and in some ways simplifies it, and in other ways kind of tells it as the hero's journey story. But there are other people who talk about the tarot as the hero's journey, maybe some of the Jungian approaches to tarot. Good, so it's time to go into breath work. We'll have a quick break now. Again, bathroom break. Get your mattress out, blanket and pillow so that you're comfortable. And also, if you can, connect your device to a speaker so you get better sound, so that you get a surround sound. And I'll also be talking to you a little bit about how we're going to do the breathwork today. We'll be doing a slightly different approach, but we'll still be doing a 14-minute breathe. So